Hi, my name is Raeann with Minding My Books. I'm a QuickBooks consultant. What that means is I work with QuickBooks Online and QuickBooks Enterprise. Today, I am talking with Daryl from MISys Manufacturing. Hi, Daryl.
Hi, Raeann. Thanks for
And
having me.
yes, thank you. We've put together 5 reasons why manufacturers choose MISys with QuickBooks Online or QuickBooks Enterprise. First of all, to get started, Daryl, can you tell us a little bit about MISys Manufacturing, or what
Sure.
is MISys Manufacturing?
Yeah, sure. So we are a deep manufacturing add-on specifically built to work with QuickBooks, and we basically represent the sort of last stop, the furthest extent that you can take QuickBooks for those companies that have some really intensive manufacturing needs, but maybe aren't quite ready to spend 6 figures on a full manufacturing ERP.
A lot of these third-party softwares, they say they integrate in with QuickBooks Online and Enterprise, but what I've run across is a lot of them just bring over the summary information.
Mhm.
So can you kind of explain and demonstrate how MISys software integrates with QuickBooks?
Absolutely. So you're correct there. A lot of systems, their integration with QuickBooks is a little bit of an afterthought. They've already kind of done everything in their system, and then they're just going to dump what they've done into QuickBooks and call it a day. MISys was developed specifically to work alongside QuickBooks. And what that means is that we've established a cooperative integration with QuickBooks. So up on the screen is a flowchart that I think does a pretty good job of explaining this relationship. The number one theme of this integration is that we're trying to avoid synchronization. We don't want to do everything in our system and then try to have to reflect the same information in 2 different places. Instead, we're trying to treat QuickBooks almost as an extension of our own system and have them work cooperatively together. So if you look at this flowchart, what we're basically doing here when MISys and QuickBooks are working together is we're allowing QuickBooks to do the things that it already does pretty well and that most QuickBooks users are already going to be pretty familiar with. That means that QuickBooks is going to be number one, the accounting system. So AR, AP, GL lives completely in QuickBooks. But we're also going to allow QuickBooks to remain the sales system. So all of your customers will live only in QuickBooks. Customer orders are entered only in QuickBooks. Invoicing happens only in QuickBooks. And MISys is basically constantly looking at QuickBooks. We're able to see everything that's going on there. We're able to respond to it. The other thing that enables is there are lots of MISys users that have needs on the customer facing side, whether it's a CRM system or EDI or e-commerce integrations. And by leaving the sales side in QuickBooks, it means that any QuickBooks compatible solution on that side will therefore be fully compatible with MISys. So we leave that whole side completely open to you. What
And that's
MISys
why I kind of like to say too is an all-in-one system. It kind of gives you everything all in one,
eh,
as the big software companies do.
Exactly, yeah. So yes, it's a different program than QuickBooks, but the way the
Mhm.
integration is set up, it behaves like one kind of unified system. So what
And
MISys will actually handle is going to be the operations side of the business. So MISys handles purchasing, production, inventory control, planning, scheduling, costing, traceability if you need that. And in practice, what that looks like is, if we start in the top right-hand corner of this flow chart, when customers want to place an order with you, that order will be entered in QuickBooks. And MISys can see that order. It can also see things like past sales activity if you want to do forecasting or sales projections. It can see quotes if you want to look at your quotes to drive projections. And it can essentially make production recommendations. And it doesn't matter if you're a make to order or custom manufacturer, or if you're make to stock or make to forecast. All we're doing is taking a cue from QuickBooks. We have visibility into the sales activity in QuickBooks to figure out what needs to get made. And of course, for those manufacturers that are a little bit more complicated, have multi-level bills of materials, MISys identifies needs across the whole structure. And then we even calculate what your purchasing needs are, help you create POs, send the POs to your vendors, receive those POs at the right time, and track the entire production process. So we'll get into that over the course of this presentation. But the biggest thing here is that once MISys has completed a build of a finished good, tracking everything that it took to make it, we're going to hand that finished good back to QuickBooks as a costed finished good inventory item. So we're using that inventory control where in QuickBooks where it's able to track the cost of each unit produced. And then when you invoice in QuickBooks like you normally would, you can see exactly how much money you made by product, by customer, by order. So we're just leveraging the tools that are already in QuickBooks. We're just tracking more details on the production and purchasing side.
And do you also track the cost based on the labor cost and the overhead hours that you track too? Is that
Yeah.
able to go into the individual unit
So
cost?
we will track whatever costs and whatever variables you want to capture. Now, if you're a pretty simple manufacturer and you don't have to track all that, you don't have to in MISys. But a lot of our users have multiple stages of production and they want to know exactly how much time and labor they're spending on each stage, what their overhead is, variables like scrap or yield variations, or even changes to the bill of material. MISys as a dedicated production system is able to capture every possible thing that could happen between when you start and when you finish a build and accurately cost that into what we're sending to QuickBooks as a finished good.
That's great. Not many companies can do that, if any, that I know of right now. So that's a really great feature to offer and to make customers who, again, can't afford that really expensive software feel like they are getting an all-in-one solution. That's great.
Exactly. That's the goal.
Mhm.
This top part of the flowchart is probably the most important aspect because that deals with how the costs are conveyed cleanly to QuickBooks. But there are a couple of other important integration points that just kind of contribute to this overall theme of keeping both MISys and QuickBooks always on the same page. One of them just has to do with paying your bills. So MISys will take over purchasing because we have much deeper purchasing functionality and it's integrated into our planning system, but you still have to pay your bills in QuickBooks. And we never want there to be any duplicate data entry at any point with our setup with QuickBooks. So basically, when you get a bill from a vendor, you're going to go to a special screen in MISys where you can compare what you're being billed with what MISys will show you as actually having received previously. Make sure it matches what you ordered and matches the price you expected to pay. And once you confirm that and hit a button, MISys will instantly create a bill to be paid in QuickBooks. That way you're still cutting your checks and paying your bills in QuickBooks the way you already would be if you're using QuickBooks now.
So that kind of keeps a bookkeeping function in QuickBooks, which is very nice, but you're still keeping the function in MISys.
Exactly. It's sort of that same theme of cleanly dividing the labor so that the accounting is still happening in QuickBooks, but purchasing being integral to the manufacturing operations and getting material in at the right times. We're handling that. It's just a clean handoff. And
Right.
And sort of along the same lines, the last integration point here is the general ledger. So all of the stuff that MISys is doing, the labor that's being applied in production process, if you do that, tracking the value of inventory, whether that's in stock or in work in process, all of these little activities that MISys is able to track, they all affect financials. So when a new MISys customer is getting set up, we're going to help them map out what accounts they want to have affected in their GL in QuickBooks by all of the conceivable things that MISys is doing, and it is very configurable. We will help you do that. That way, once you start running with MISys, every transaction that you do in MISys produces the appropriate credits and debits. We do keep it in a subledger because a lot of times accountants want to review everything before it flows into their GL. But whenever you want, usually once a day, you hit a button, MISys will upload all of those credits and debits to the QuickBooks GL so that your financials in QuickBooks are able to reflect what both systems are doing. And there's always a full cross-reference. So if you see any entry in your GL, there's going to be a memo field pointing to exactly where that came from in MISys, so you can look into it if you need to.
And then as far as the inventory, so the raw materials reside within MISys. So then that way, again, only the finished goods are into QuickBooks.
Exactly. And so one of the interesting things there is a lot of times by the time the companies come to us, their QuickBooks database is a little bit full, to put it lightly. So one of the benefits that MISys offers is to offload a lot of the heavy lifting and a lot of the transaction heavy stuff that has to be done in QuickBooks if you're running it all by itself.
Mhm.
which can extend the useful life of QuickBooks, improve performance, et cetera, because you're getting all of that transaction heavy processing out of QuickBooks and bringing it
Mhm.
into MISys, which sits on a industrial strength Microsoft SQL database and can handle whatever you throw at it.
All right. So really what would have to happen is just to get your inventory in an Excel spreadsheet or CSV file, and then you'd be able to work with it to import it in.
Yeah, we can import
Okay.
anything you want from Excel or any Excel
Mhm.
compatible format, but because we were designed for QuickBooks users, we also have the ability to directly pull from QuickBooks just to
Oh,
ease your
great.
setup. So we can
Mhm.
directly import vendors because we do purchasing, items, even bills of material. If you have good bills of material in QuickBooks,
Oh,
MISys can
really?
pull that straight out
Mm.
automatically and save you a little bit of time.
That's great. I did not know that because in QuickBooks you can't bring in your bill of materials through Enterprise. So that would be a really great time saver for anyone
Yeah,
moving up to
yeah. So
MISys. Yeah.
yeah, obviously those of you QuickBooks Online, you're not going to have
Yeah.
bills of material,
No.
but in QuickBooks Desktop
Mhm.
near Enterprise, we can pull those bills of material directly in as part of an initial import, which, there's going to be more you'll probably want to set up in MISys after that, but
Mhm.
the the intensive setup stuff we can do automatically if you have good data in QuickBooks, of course.
That's great. Hey, Daryl, can you show us some examples of the QuickBooks actually flowing in, or actually MISys flowing into QuickBooks?
Sure thing. So I'm going to switch over to MISys itself. And if we think about that first part of the integration, which is kind of two parts, it's reading and responding to sales activity and telling you kind of what you need to do. And then it's once production is done, pushing it back. So when we talk about responding to QuickBooks, there's a bunch of ways that you can do it. And we'll talk about some more specific examples in the later sections of this presentation. But even just something as simple as what sales orders do I need to worry about that haven't already been scheduled? This would apply mostly to make to order manufacturers. If you're more make to stock, there are other ways of going about this. But you can actually see MISys connecting to QuickBooks, and what it's done is identified any new customer orders that haven't already been scheduled in production. And even when we talk about this, we are looking at QuickBooks records here. We can see a customer order for a particular item. And you can even see this little drill hovering here. Now, I have QuickBooks open. MISys is capable of integrating with QuickBooks in the background if you're not logged into QuickBooks, or if you have somebody who you don't want to be logged into QuickBooks, but who needs the integration. But because QuickBooks is open, if I hit my drill down tool, which exists throughout MISys and you can drill down to anything you want, but it also works going into QuickBooks, that instantly bumps me over to the corresponding QuickBooks sales order so I can see it. This is
Wow.
the nature of the integration. This allows the two systems to almost act as one. And I can schedule production directly from there. I just need to choose an inventory location. MISys, of course, has unlimited inventory locations built in. If I generate a new order here, MISys will automatically populate it with my bill of material. And in other sections, we'll go into detail about all the stuff that you can track during the production process. But for now, I'm going to keep it super simple and skip to the end. I'm going to complete this build. So I will complete all 20 units here. And now that I'm done, I want to give that to QuickBooks. So I'm simply going to hit my transfer to sales button. I'll take all 20 units that I've built. And if we look at QuickBooks right now, and literally just look at that item in our item list in QuickBooks, we have none on hand in QuickBooks. We just finished making it. So I'm going to kick that right over to QuickBooks. And instantly, if we watch that 0, it instantly becomes 20. And not only that, but if we look at our average cost, that $60.62 is straight from MISys based on tracking all of the material, labor, and overhead that went into that build. All right, and now we can sell it like we normally would. I can even drill right back down to that original sales order from here and hit the invoice button, and out the door it goes.
That is seamless.
That's what we're going for.
Yeah.
Now, on the purchasing side, that was the second integration point in the flow chart. We receive a purchase order. So I'm just going to, you'll notice that the workflows are all visual here in MISys, just like you typically see in QuickBooks. If I wanted to, quickly receive a purchase order here, like I've got 5 spools of wire that I need to bring in, I'll just check that in. And eventually I'm going to get a bill for that, usually a couple of days later, maybe. When I get that bill, I'm simply going to choose the same PO, double check that the quantity and the amount I'm being billed for matches what I should be paying. I can adjust it here if I need to. I'll just put in a random invoice number here and I'll hit invoice checked. And instantly, again, it's going to pass it over to QuickBooks. And if we were to look at our latest bill here, we're going to see that same one, Raeann 011, coming right over. Now, the item itself doesn't need to exist in QuickBooks. The only items that you need to have in your QuickBooks item list are the items you actually sell. So MISys is giving us a memo field describing exactly what it is that we're paying for line by line, all instantly created in QuickBooks.
So it's not even in summary, it's each line item.
Yep, you will see each line item you're paying for straight from MISys, whether or not the items ever existed in QuickBooks.
Mm-hmm.
Now, last but not least, when we do these kinds of activities, it's generating credits and debits here in MISys. So I can even look at that manufacturing order and see its history and see all of the material and labor and overhead that the system's using in order to build this thing. And of course, just looking at the inventory, we can see that, okay, in order to do this assembly, we consumed all of these materials, we added this finished good, and we can even see the credit and debit accounts that are being affected by all of those transactions. So for example, 1320 is my inventory asset account, and putting that finished good in is debiting that for $1,212.40. So if we look at just that specific entry, this has not yet been posted to the GL. Like I said, it's normally done day by day. So if I'm the accountant and it's the end of the day, I'm about to go home, which is usually when we do this, we simply hit the post button in our accounting section, period end. And MISys will it'll always offer to create a backup. It'll take all the unposted credits and debits, push them over to QuickBooks with the full cross-reference. It's simultaneously taking a cool inventory snapshot. So if you do this every day, you have an inventory time machine to look back at what you had at any point in time. That was a common request from our customers that we put in. But now if we were to go into QuickBooks, look at our chart of accounts and maybe just run a little quick report on that 1320 inventory account. And I'm going to sort this to just today. We're going to be able to see somewhere in here that 12/12/40 that we did. We can see it right there. And what we're actually able to see is not only when we added that to our inventory asset when we transferred it, but also the handoff where we transfer that out of MISys and into QuickBooks. So line by line, we've got it, and every transaction has this memo field detailing exactly what we did.
So this makes your accountant happy.
Yeah, it should. The accountant will see, when these credits and debits start flowing in, the accountant can see exactly why they all existed. So these little numbers here point to where you can find the transaction details in MISys or the purchase order it's related to. So the accountant will see it. And by the way, if you're generating a lot of activity, some accountants don't want all of this detail. We allow you to set how much detail you want to post. You can summarize by date, by account, just to minimize the amount of stuff flowing into QuickBooks once you're comfortable that everything's going where it should.
Can you show us how it works with QuickBooks Online?
Sure. So it's actually the exact same setup. I don't even have to switch flowcharts. All of the integration points are the same. And if I wanted to, I've just logged into my QuickBooks Online copy right here. And I'm just going to go down to my settings and tell MISys to point to QuickBooks Online instead. So it's nice and easy. I'll just pull down to QuickBooks Online. And all of my settings should carry over. And then I'm just going to say connect to QuickBooks. And this little kind of certificate pops up. We've successfully connected. I'll close the window. And I think I just have a different AP account that we use in QuickBooks Online, so I'm going to fix that. So now the integration is enabled for QuickBooks Online, and I can do the exact same thing. I can hit that process sales orders function, and MISys is going to find any of my open orders in QuickBooks Online. I might need to go back a bit.
And keep in mind with QuickBooks Online, they don't have the sales order form. So how does that work within MISys? How do
Good
you make
question.
that
Yeah.
sync?
So if we go down into our sales area, QuickBooks Online, correct, does not have anything called sales orders, but what they do have are similar to QuickBooks Desktop. They have sales receipts, which MISys is able to see in both online and desktop. But they also have estimates. And the interesting thing about estimates within QuickBooks Online is that all estimates have a little status. So I'm going to create a new estimate here in QuickBooks Online. So I'll choose a customer. I'll choose a ship date. I'll choose an item that they want to purchase. Maybe we want 500 units of these special desk lamps that I sell. And up here is the key. So right now this is defaulting to a pending estimate. That's like a quote. But if the customer has already accepted it, we just move this to be accepted. And if I save it, this is SO0731. Then when I go to my process sales order screen here in MISys, it's going to be able to identify it right there. Same drill down capabilities, just like a regular old.
So really, the estimate is being treated kind of like a sales order.
Exactly. Once it's accepted, we consider that to be the equivalent of a sales order. So that way, you have that order entry capability right in QuickBooks Online, fully compatible with MISys. And from here on in, it's the exact same integration points in all the ways we already showed you with desktop. It works the exact same way.
That's great. So whoever, if you prefer desktop, you're fine there. If you prefer online, then it reacts the same way or gives you the same information. Would you say there's anything different at all between the two then, except for the estimate?
No, that is literally everything else is completely identical. I suppose Intuit is owed a lot of credit there because they gave us a lot of the same capabilities to do what we do with both online and desktop. So when somebody asks us what should we get, we just say whatever you prefer.
That's great. Honestly, I would say that your third-party manufacturing software is the very best that I've seen as far as a seamless integration, what it can do. It's incredible.
Yeah, we've been doing it for 40 years, even before QuickBooks was around. So we've had a little bit of time to perfect the seamlessness as best we can.
That's great. So a lot of my that call me who use QuickBooks and or QuickBooks Enterprise, they always ask me about a forecasting solution. One thing about QuickBooks is that it's great at looking at historical information, but they do absolutely nothing for any kind of forecasting. And a lot of manufacturers need that. When I get a call from a potential client or someone who's looking to expand software, and they ask about forecasting, that's instantly when I think of MISys. So can you kind of explain and show us how your forecasting works within your software?
Sure. And I mean, I've had that conversation a few times. And it's interesting. I mean, it's beyond just forecasting. There really aren't any particularly useful planning tools in QuickBooks. I've heard a lot of people talk about where right, we've got a ton of things that we need to build. And in order to figure out whether or not we have enough inventory, if we want to in QuickBooks, we literally have to pretend we've already built weeks worth of production just to see what happens to our inventory after all of that. And of course, that's not a great situation because now you've potentially you're going negative on inventory. The system won't even let you build it. You've pretended to build a lot of things that you haven't even built yet. MISys has a lot more natural approach to planning. And for this, I'm going to focus specifically on a tool called material requirements planning. Now, I've got a sort of visual workflow here that I think does a pretty good job of explaining this. But the one thing I say to everybody is, most people who I'm showing this to are already doing everything I'm about to describe. The only difference is you're grabbing all of this data from QuickBooks and you're putting it into a spreadsheet or you're doing it in your head, whereas MISys does this completely automatically and instantaneously. So what we're doing is creating something called a master production schedule. It's like a central planning interface where all the variables come together automatically. It's going to be starting with everything you have in stock right now. MISys is all about maintaining constantly accurate up to the second inventory for exactly what you have for raw materials, subassembly, work in process, finished goods, everything you've got right now, combined with everything that's scheduled. What purchase orders are due to come in, when, what production is scheduled, what are you going to be using, what are you going to be making, and what are your sales orders in QuickBooks? What do you need to ship out? What are the ship dates? MISys also knows your calendar. We know what days you're open, what days you're closed, what your holidays are, how many hours you're working per day. We even allow you to bring in a sales forecast, which we'll talk about. So, when we say forecasting, we're looking beyond just the orders that happen to be on hand, and we're trying to anticipate what orders we might see. And so there are a lot of cool tools for creating forecasts, which we'll talk about. But once that's all together, MISys can figure out what's missing and make a series of recommendations for what you need to be buying and when, and what you need to be making and when, and then we'll help you automatically generate those orders and build your schedule very seamlessly and easily. So again, that is, if I had to point out one particular feature in MISys that leads to more people kind of choosing the system over others, it would be this one.
I can attest to that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this one's really hard to do without the right tools.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to create a master production schedule. We're just going to call this MPS for short. And to give you an idea, here's my QuickBooks. Here's my customer area in QuickBooks. I have shipping between, we're on February 3rd right now, between February 6th and the end of April, I have nearly $800,000 worth of open orders. And I am not a typical example because against all of those orders, I literally have next to nothing going on, just a few different production runs scheduled. So I'm looking for something to help us avoid some of these situations here. So I am going to fire this up. I'm also going to tell the system to maintain my safety stock levels at all times. That way, we're always maintaining a little bit of extra inventory. You don't have to literally run down to nothing. The system maintains your cushions for you. And when I fire this up, MISys, you'll see it connecting to QuickBooks. It's going to scroll through a few hundred orders in QuickBooks, look at their ship dates, figure out what's going out the door. And what it's actually doing is working backwards from those ship dates to figure out what needs to happen. So then I'm going to go over to my summary tab, and right off the bat, I can see what's going to be going on. In this case, over the next few months, you can go as far into the future as you want with this planning tool. The lower half of the screen is listing every single inventory item of any kind that's going to have something happen to it. And of course, as you'd assume, items you see on the top in red represent your trouble spots. So here, for example, is one of my finished goods. And I can see that, well, I'm doing fine right now. I am well above my safety stock level in inventory right now, but I don't know what is happening on February 9th, but we're taking a pretty steep drop at that point. And why is that happening? Well, it looks like we have a very large sales order here going out. And again, QuickBooks integration. So if we need to check out that sales order in more detail for any reason, we can just hit our drill down tool and we're instantly looking at it. So 5,000 units. I can reschedule that now if I need to, if I think that's going to present an issue, but I don't think it will. So I'm able to see these kind of future shortages. Now that's an example of me selling a lot of stuff and identifying that I need more. Now I do want to talk about another particular example though, where here we have a situation where a particular item, this is one of my components, my raw materials that I use. Well, in this case, I'm showing that I have production scheduled where I need a bunch of this stuff and a purchase order coming in later that'll take care of it. So I don't need to order more. I have a timing issue. And this is something that only this tool can spot. A system that warns you when you're running low on something will not be able to tell you, hey, in a couple of weeks, you're going to have a gap in your inventory. And this happens all the time, because this is exactly what you would see if you placed a big PO for a part, and I'm sure it never happens for anybody, but your vendor ends up being delayed, and they say they can't deliver something anymore in a week, but it's coming in, 2 weeks late. Well, when that happens, you've got a gap. And of course, MISys will tell you the ramifications of that, so that you have the opportunity to drill down to that work order, reschedule that for March 3rd in this case. And that way you don't go, day before or day of production and realize, oh no, we don't have the stuff that we need. We were supposed to get it. Oh, it's because the vendor delayed it, and now we need to scramble to reschedule production. No, MISys allows you to make all of the necessary adjustments. And if that requires delaying a customer order or anything like that, we give you ample time to do that. Incidentally, just along that same line, on our dashboard, MISys has a series of customizable dashboard alerts. There we go. We no longer have our gap, by the way. And one of the things you can do with these alerts is generate automatic emails. So along those lines, what a lot of our customers are doing these days is creating alerts to go off a week or two in advance of an expected delivery, and having that generate an email directly to the vendor automatically saying, hey, we're showing the following items are due to be delivered in 2 weeks. Can you please confirm that's still on schedule, so that if there is going to be an issue, they can get it updated in the system well in advance and make the necessary adjustments like we did.
So this is saving on so much extra work that most companies have to do to get this information.
Yeah, I mean,
Wait.
I come from personally a background in bakery manufacturing, and we bought MISys years and years and years ago. I'm not going to say how many, because we had a similar incident to what just happened there. We had to reschedule production for some reason, but the spreadsheet I was using didn't account for the fact that, while we're bumping up production, we haven't brought in a delivery date on a key piece of packaging that we needed. So bakery manufacturing, you're making $10,000 of muffins per run, and if you have nothing to package it in, it just goes straight to the dumpster. So we literally threw away $10,000 worth of product, all because we didn't have a system able to identify a gap like that. So this became sort of the eyes in the back of my head as a planner, to make sure that we always had what we need when we needed it, and if there was going to be an issue, we could see it coming.
What I also see with a lot of businesses is they will have one or two people that know everything that's going on, but if something happens with them, what then you're in a lot of trouble in your business. So you don't want to leave it up to human error, I guess.
The guy or gal who builds the super complicated spreadsheet that they need to oversee all of this stuff cannot get sick. They can't take a day off because nobody else can run things. At least this way, you're centralizing the data, you're automating that, and hopefully freeing up that person to do more useful things.
Yeah, they can at least take a vacation once or twice a year.
There you go. Now, the other stuff here, again, we've got a lot of things that we need to build. And this is where it gets particularly cool, because sure, we can see that there's a shortage here, and maybe we want to manually click here and tell the system what we want to make. But we can use some easy buttons. We can say, you know what, MISys, I can see there's a shortage. You can see there's a shortage. Why don't you figure out how to get rid of that? The system will take care of that automatically. But here's the thing. We're manufacturers. There are potentially, we know there's going to be raw materials that we need. There could be sub-assemblies and sub-sub-assemblies going out into, 10, 12, even 16 layers deep. So we actually just lost ground. We started off with only a few shortages. Now we have even more, because we don't make this stuff out of thin air. But next to the Resolve Shortage button, we have the Resolve All Shortages button. And the system will go through the entire bill of material structure and automatically figure out what we need at each level underneath. And not only that, but it's also understanding lead times. So if it knows what date you need to ship a product, it'll figure out how many days it takes to make it. It'll figure out what else you need to do, what else you need to buy, and how long it takes to get that in from your vendors, how long it takes to make sub-assemblies. So it's literally working backwards, understanding that lead time. So when it comes up with a plan, it's actually realistic. and everything's working in concert. We're not pretending that you can build a subassembly in a day when it might take you 5 days to complete that run. And we're not pretending you can get a part in a day when you realistically might take you 2 or 3 weeks.
Well, so 16 sub assemblies deep, is that right? Or
Yep.
you
Yeah,
can, okay.
that's a maximum level. I think Jumbo Jet goes like 12 levels deep, so hopefully that's enough for folks.
Yep.
And of
But
course,
that's incredible that it can read all the sub-assemblies also, though, to
yeah,
know
yeah.
what you need.
Again, it's completely
Automated.
automatic, and a lot of people see this and they go, "Oh, there's so much data here. How could we ever set this up?" To be clear, the only data that has been set up in MISys that allows it to do this stuff is accurate bills of material, accurate inventory, which MISys is all geared around tracking, and lead times. How many days does it take you to get stuff from your vendors? How long does it take you to make stuff? So you set that up and the system can do all of the stuff. And when it comes to lead times, by the way, it can track actual lead times too. So it tracks your vendor performance automatically. It'll tell you that, hey, this vendor, you might be planning on 7 days, but the vendor is taking an average of 10 days, sometimes up to 21 days. So maybe you want to plan on a longer lead time there. And it can leverage that information going the opposite way too, because, sure, in this case, we're working backwards from all of our ship dates, but what if a customer calls and says, hey, we want to place this obscenely large order with you. How soon can you get it for us? Well, using that same exact information, the system can go, okay, well, do we have that now? No, we don't. We're going to have to make it. How long does it take to make it? Do we have enough stuff to make it? No, we don't. We need to buy parts. We need to build subassemblies. So using all of that same information, it'll project forward. And in another section, you'll see all of the data that goes underneath this particular product in terms of manufacturing process information and capacities, which it's even taking into account for those that want to go that detailed. It's completely optional. But when it's done, it'll tell me, all right, that's March 13th. That's more than a month away because of all of the things we need to set up. And if you want to be safe, tell the customer March 20th. Give yourself a little cushion.
Wow, those analytics are incredible.
Yeah. And you had originally asked about forecasting. And of course, in this case, we're only looking at actual orders. But MISys has, I guess this would be the crystal ball option. If we use the workflow where we're using a future what if, we can do our normal planning, but we have the ability to introduce a what if scenario. We'll call this Raeann's forecast. And a forecast can be something as simple as you saying, I think that we need to sell this many of this item out of this location on this date. That's a forecast. It's just very manual. We can also import anything from Excel. So MISys can import anything from an Excel or any Excel compatible format. You can see all the options there. But probably most useful, we give you another one of those easy buttons where we can look at your sales history in QuickBooks. So if you were to transition from QuickBooks Alone to MISys tomorrow, all that sales history that's sitting in QuickBooks is available to MISys on day one. So we can look at invoices, we can look at estimates and quotes. If you want to look at, if you're more make to order and you want to say, okay, what if some of these quotes convert? What happens then? We can look at sales receipts as well. I'm going to stick with invoices and I'm going to say, well, let's look at Q2 of last year. So let's look at, we're going to look at April 1st of 2022 until June 30th, again, of 2022. I want to look at everything. You can filter down to just certain items or product lines. You can use all sorts of filters to target this list, but I don't sell that much, so I'm going to look at everything. I'm also going to pretend that my business is growing by leaps and bounds, so I'm going to double the volume that I sold last year and projected for this year. And of course, because we're projecting 1 year ago, I just need to offset it. And MISys is going to automatically build a forecast based on all of my sales activity from last year Q2 so that I can plan on it for this year Q2. So if I save that forecast, I can pop it right into this overall plan. There's Raeann's forecast, we'll post it in. And now the system's literally going to show us how that projection affects us. Right? And we can do the same thing, resolve all of our shortages. And now when we go through and actually start creating purchase orders or scheduling production, it's going to cover not just our current orders, but all the ones we anticipate coming into.
That's a great feature. I've had a couple of people who have integrated with their QuickBooks Enterprise with MISys, and I asked, well, what was the most important feature that you liked? And they said, we really like the what if. And they said, you really need to know, if I do it this way, how many more man hours does that take? And just, just all of that.
And part of it is we've been doing this for a long time, but it's become more and more important lately because
Mm,
projecting out long-term needs has become more important just due to the way the supply chain works now.
mm-hmm,
You need to stake your claim to stuff pretty far in advance. We used to
mm,
sell this tool as a way of minimizing the amount of inventory that you're holding onto, and it's great for that because it tells you exactly what you need and when. But in a scenario where you have limited supply of something and it becomes available and you need to jump on it because you don't know when it might be available again, then using a forecasting tool like this allows you to understand, okay, well, over the next 6 months, over the next year, how much am I going to need for that? Um, and that way you know exactly how much you should get because I can't tell you how many people I've spoken with who are saying we have hundreds of thousands of dollars or more of excess inventory because it became available and we just bought what we could and then didn't realize that, oh, we don't use that much or we weren't going to need that much. Um, this gives you a much more educated guess and a much better projection. Another thing it can do is it's coming up with the numbers. We don't have to create purchase orders for this stuff right now. So we actually have some customers that will use this to make projections and then they will send forecasts to their vendors and say, we're not ordering this now, but these are the volumes that we anticipate so that their vendors can have things ready for them. It helps their vendors and it helps them kind of get their foot in the door for any stock that they might need in the future. So there is so much that you can do um, with a planning
So
tool
they're
like
so
this.
the can actually forecast also to make sure that they get those products.
Exactly. I mean, you know, if you're just using QuickBooks to plan, there tends to be a lot of last minute uh-ohs.
Mm-hmm.
And then you call your vendors and you're putting your vendors on their heels trying to get things to
Mm-hmm.
you. Um, if you know what you need long term and you can share that with your vendors, then it smooths out so much.
Mm-hmm.
And it helps everybody and hopefully improves your relationship with your vendors.
Exactly.
Now, all of this is just planning until we pull the trigger. So we can do any kind of analysis we want. MISys even has a handy little cash commitment summary so we can project how much money you're going to spend if you did want to go ahead with this forecast. But I'm going to hit the button that allows us to start creating the orders that we need now the planning is done. The first question it's going to ask is, do you want to create purchase orders right now? Maybe you don't. Maybe you're doing this to set up a production schedule. But I'm going to say yes. And notice we're not getting a report. MISys doesn't want you to look over numbers manually and then try to create your POs by hand. We are literally going to present to you what you need to buy and when. So we look at this particular item. This is a blue wire nut. I use this to make lots and lots of different products. And here the system's telling me I need a total of 20,269. That represents the total quantity of this one item that I need across the board, already rolled up. So those customers that make a lot of volume, that have common parts across many of the items that they build, this is huge because now you're not ordering things order by order. So we need this much for this order, and then you go to the next. Oh, we need more. We got to go back. It's all totaled up here, and it's also understanding that we don't just need this now. We need it over the course of the next several weeks. So on the lower half of the screen, it's literally breaking down. Okay, I need 3,600 by February 8th, which means we need to order it by January 27th. Then we need another 1,000 by the 9th, etc. And as a purchaser, I'm not going to make my vendor drive out here on the 8th and the 9th and the 10th and the 13th. I'm probably going to say, all right, let me get enough for February, buy that all together. And which vendor do we want to use? We've got two qualified vendors here, each with their own unique product codes, different units, maybe different lead times. And I'm going to either create a new PO or add it onto an existing one. So this is fantastic if you do blanket orders or contract buys and you just want to add releases when you need more. You can just add on to your blanket order right here, or I'm going to create a new one. And 9181 is a little bit of an odd number. I have to order this in multiples of full pallets of 1,000. So the system will do that. We even get into price breaks. You can set up a minimum order quantity on certain items if you have one from your vendor, all of which can be incorporated into the system. And if you're ignoring your lead time like I am, it's just giving me a heads up that, hey, January 27th was a few days ago. In fact, it's been giving me error messages this whole time about my lead time. It will always watch your back and make sure you don't place an order without at least telling you that you might be rushing the vendor a little bit on this one.
So really, it makes it hard for people to make mistakes.
Yes, yeah, that's the idea.
That's the idea of it right there.
Yeah, you don't want to send out a PO not realizing that you're asking for it sooner than your vendor can deliver, because sometimes it'll take a day or two or not at all for your vendor to say, oh, wait a minute, we can't do that. And there is a buy all button. You know, you typically wouldn't do this for 6 months worth of purchasing, but you can use it for targeted lists. You can get all the items or item types from a particular vendor and hit buy all and create one giant order. Bunch of tools that you have here to interactively create your POs to address your needs. And this is plugged directly into what you need for production. So for the purchaser, there's no more guesswork. There's no more manual calculations, no more poring over spreadsheets. Once you've done your planning and incorporated everything you want, this is the shopping list that'll keep production fed. So I'm going to leave here. Of course, the flip side of the coin is the system is going to ask me about scheduling production. So just like it did with purchasing, it's going to give me a list of everything that I need to make, not just our finished goods, but also subassemblies. And when it comes to subassemblies, if we've got common subassemblies used to make lots and lots of different things, just like we did grouping purchase orders together, we can group subassembly requirements together. This is huge for production managers, because if you have a better awareness of your overall needs of a particular part or subassembly that you need to make, so we need this many this week, this many next week, why wouldn't you just do a single efficient production run and knock out your requirements for the next few weeks, rather than having to keep revisiting it and keep those changeovers going on the lines and all of that? Now, in this case, I could either hit build all, I could build individual ones, but it's just like purchasing, and you're zapping requirements live.
So again, everything's automated.
Exactly right.
So we've talked about the material planning, but what do you do with the production schedules? So how does that work?
Yeah. I mean, if you're in production, the schedule is not something that you set and forget. It's constantly in flux. And a lot of companies have very limited capacities that they're constantly juggling. You know, there are plenty of companies that are in the fortunate position of getting more orders than they have time to deal with. Now, not only does MISys allow you to schedule builds independent of when the orders are shipping. So, you know, if you have time and you want to get to an order that doesn't have to ship for a couple of weeks right now, MISys allows you to do that, because if we look at our production schedule here, we're building all of this right here. It's all visual. We can even drag things around just by dragging and dropping to adjust it. But for some manufacturers, those that want it, there's a little bit more happening underneath each one of these bars. Now, building this R50 item for me that you see I have stacked up quite a bit here involves using machines, people, resources that are finite in their capacity. So we can go to a slightly different view here called the shop operations view. And this is part of the MISys shop floor control module. This is completely optional. So for anyone who doesn't need to go to this level, don't worry about it. But if capacity is an issue for you, what we're able to do here, I'm going to look between now and the end of March, we can go into a schedule that actually looks at each step in the production process and how it lines up. Now, to give you a sense of what we're looking at here, I have 5 different orders that are basically using the same exact resources at the same exact times. So everything is bright red, indicating there's a conflict. So when you see these conflicts, there's a few different things you can do. You can simply drag and drop. Say, all right, well, I'll just do this order a little bit later, or better yet, a little bit earlier. The 5th happens to be a weekend, so maybe we'll start this afternoon. And we can get that done. And notice it turns yellow because it's no longer in conflict. That's easy enough, but obviously most of our customers have potentially hundreds of open orders at any given time, all jockeying for position with finite resources. So we give you a lot more within this interface. Number one, if you have multiple machines capable of doing the same thing or multiple areas where you can do an individual step, the system has some substitution logic. So if I know that I need to get this drilling process done here, but I can see that my main drill won't be available until days after I need it, actually the day after I need it, I could instead find another alternative that happens to be open. So I have a portable drill. It's a little bit slower. It's only 75% as efficient. But if I flip that, it'll at least relieve the conflict on that particular order so we can do it somewhere else. Finally, if you imagine a much more busy production schedule, or better yet, we're going to use the magic of editing, and I'm going to populate the schedule with lots more stuff right now. So I've just populated our schedule with lots more stuff, tons and tons of stuff between now and the end of May, and all kinds of conflicts. Well, if I click on an area that I know is a bottleneck for me, what I'm able to see is, well, geez, it looks like we have a couple of peaks, but even just by eyeballing it, I know we have enough time to get this all done. So I just need to spread some things out and fill in some of those open times. And you'll be able to see that very quickly we start to catch up a bit on our capacity. Okay. So this tool ends up being terrific for people who have a finite capacity. They have to juggle it. I'm not going to obviously solve this whole puzzle right now, but it can even eyeball it so that you know, all right, how much of my available capacity am I scheduled to use? Where do I have time? Where do I not have time? So you can level this off. And you can make decisions on which, if there's a conflict and somebody needs to get shorted, you can make decisions on which one that's going to be. And MISys even has safeguards in place, including an option that if you are making things for particular customers, it will not allow you to accidentally schedule production to be done after that customer's promised ship date. It'll force you to update the ship date first.
Does it give you an alert, or how does it notify you?
Yeah, if I were to drag, all of these are for stock, fortunately, but if I were to drag one of these past a ship date for a customer that has one, it pops up immediately, says completion date cannot be later than ship date. You can't schedule it to be done after you're supposed to ship it. So it forces you to change the ship date first, which typically involves notifying the customer. Of course, if you don't want to do that, MISys also allows you to, I'll just save my changes here. It also allows you to include optional shifts. So if you have overtime when you get particularly busy, you're going to open up a half day on a weekend or a couple extra hours each day during the week, you check this box and MISys will give you some extra time. In this case, if I were to look at that same area, what you'll notice is that my black dotted line has a small bump out every Saturday because I've got a half day Saturday that I'd open up for overtime.
So it's kind of like a what if situation with that.
Oh yeah, definitely another one of those what if tools that allows you to build a realistic schedule, because if you start doing all of your material planning and you don't pay attention to your production capacity, then you go into production one day with a to-do list a mile long, can't get it done. Now everything starts cascading. This allows you to get going. And even for customers that are just getting started with MISys, they typically just have everything on back order and they're just trying to comb through it as best they can with no kind of long-term plan of how to get out. It's every day is an emergency. This allows you to start digging out and deciding when you're going to get to each of those orders. So literally, as these customers go online with MISys and start using these tools, they start to build things out and start calling customers and say, all right, we have an estimated date now for when we can get this to you. And now they're able to come up with a more realistic plan.
So it keeps the customer happy and it saves the company money because
it's certainly better than just telling the customers, we don't know when we're going to get to it, or just saying everything's 16 weeks out or something like that.
Yeah. Call us back later.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The one other thing I do want to say about that is if you're interested in those tools, check out our next section where we talk about shop floor control. We're going to talk about all of the data that goes into allowing that module to work, specifically about steps and processes and timing.
Okay, so as we're talking about the production schedule, a lot of what I hear from my customers is that they can't keep track of their actual labor and their overhead costs. So in
Mhm.
QuickBooks Enterprise, they're putting in just estimates of what they think the cost is, in which you know that that will not really give you an accurate cost. So now that we've talked about like the production schedule, can we talk about the shop floor control and how that works within MISys?
Yeah, so it's interesting. The section that we just got done with is production scheduling, and that talks about steps and the process and everything like that. And in a way, setting that up allows you to kill two birds with one stone. It not only gives you much more detailed scheduling information, but allows you to get much more detailed costing information. So the way that I do want to be clear here, not every manufacturer needs to go to this level. So if you look at this and this is well beyond where you need to be, don't worry about it. You don't have to set this stuff up. But the people who need this really need it.
I
So
agree.
I'm gonna head down to our bills of material area. Now, some of my products here, like this one, it's a regular old bill of material. I got a bunch of parts, I got some sub-assemblies, it's multi-level, and that's all well and good, but that's it. That's all it is. There is nothing here on the routing tab. So it is optional. But if I go to a different item, this one, we not only have this bill of material and all of these parts, but we have a process defined. And this process tells MISys how you make this product, what steps need to happen. That's what the operations are. What work centers those steps happen at. A work center is basically any machine area. Sometimes a work center is a person out on the floor who needs to do the work. And then we have timing. And we define timing because different manufacturers work in different ways. So you can have a runtime per unit. So take the number of units, multiply it by the time it takes per unit, and you know how long it's going to take. There can also be setup time, whether that's a changeover, if you have to change the line over and it takes a certain amount of time to set up, regardless of whether you're making 1, 10, 100, or 1,000 units. That can also be for batch processors. Setup time applies to a batch. So if we're making things in gallons or pounds because we're a batch processor, but the batch is going to be 200 pounds per batch at this stage. You can say how long it takes to do for each batch. So the system looks at how many batches you need and calculates the total time there. You can have queue time, like a buffer between steps. You can have wait time. Paint needs to dry, product needs to cool, bread needs to proof. That accommodates non-active time. Nobody's working on it. There's no labor going into it, but we've got to wait a certain amount of time before we move on to the next step. So that is what allows the system to do what we covered in our previous section on capacity scheduling. The system knows how much time we need at these different areas. But if we look at the main screen on our bill of material, MISys is also giving us these material, labor, and overhead numbers. And it's getting particularly the labor and overhead numbers from those same routing details, because when we call out a work center here, like the assembly area, and I'm just drilling down to it, each work center allows you to set up what resources that work center uses. And the resources used can be classified as material, labor, or overhead. So you can even put consumable materials consumed at the work center level, like gloves, et cetera. And that way you don't have to put them in your bill of material. Every bill of material that goes through there, you just put it on the work center, and the system knows that anything going through here is going to use some gloves and other consumables. But here we're talking about labor. And in labor, what we're saying is that for every hour that this work center runs, it consumes 1 hour of labor rate A. In other words, one person who makes our stockroom labor rate approximately is going to be there at all times. And if you have 5 people on the line, you would say 5 people, 5 units of labor per hour. You can have various labor rates. You can have overhead like electricity, or even labor overhead to go along with the direct labor costs you're putting in there.
So
All,
does this, can I just ask a quick question?
yeah.
So Is this what helps you with the other production planning and the what ifs and that type of thing? Is that where it's getting the numbers from?
Yeah, well, actually, it can. So,
Mhm.
this one, not everybody needs to do this, but
Mhm.
you see it a lot with companies that have to hire a large number of temps.
Mhm.
In addition to material planning, telling you what you need and when you need it, and capacity scheduling, where you're building your schedule so that everything fits within your work center or machine capacity. A lot of people will go, okay, well, we've got everything fitting, but how many people do I need to have working on each of these days?
Mhm.
Well, MISys can literally look at all of that scheduled activity and tell you how many labor hours of every type you've scheduled each day.
Wow.
So that's a pretty fancy one, but
Yeah.
the system has that data and it can give you sort of an hour requirements list.
That's great.
So we do have that all set up here, and of course that is what's driving. When we multiply the time that this bill of material needs at each of these stages, that's what's driving our material, labor, and overhead costs here. Now, the other question that I always get when I describe that is, okay, well, that's the bill of material, but when the rubber meets the road and we start making stuff, it's not always what we think. We sometimes take more time or less time, or a machine goes down, etc. So when we talk about the shop floor control module, it means setting up routing details and defining the process. But it also means being able to schedule around that process, that capacity scheduling that we just saw. And it means being able to track that process, not only record what's actually happening in each step, but also following the order through multiple stages of work in process. A lot of QuickBooks add-ons don't even track work in process, period. Not only does MISys allow you to track what's been allocated to production, what orders are currently in process, what inventory has been taken off the shelf and is currently being worked on but isn't a finished good yet, both in terms
Mhm.
of finances and in terms of inventory. But we can literally say that this inventory is at step 3 of 6 and should be moving to this next stage soon.
So for the accounting purposes of it, it really gives you a great knowledge of what you're making, what you're not making, it just gives you a
Yeah,
great overall picture
yeah,
of where you stand.
exactly. So, and right in QuickBooks, you can have a series of asset accounts. What's my raw material in MISys worth, and how
Mhm.
much do I have in physical work in process at this moment? So you can get a breakdown. It's not just sitting in inventory. You can get a breakdown of what's on the shelves versus what's somewhere in production. Other considerations here is the ability to security protect individual steps. So typically you see a QA step, you can lock that down so that only qualified individuals can sign off on it. Otherwise you can't proceed or can't get a finished good. Um, there's a location here. We get a lot of people that outsource certain parts of their process. So not only does MISys allow you to set up outside vendors as work centers so that you can track when that order goes out to them and when that material leaves your facility to go over there. But we tie it in so well that if you start an outside process, MISys will automatically generate shipping documentation for you to send that stuff out. And when you complete that outside process, we'll automatically receive against a purchase order for the service you're paying that vendor for, all as part of the same transaction. So you don't have to remember to do multiple things. It's all just tied in.
Well, that's a time savings because I know that's a real issue within QuickBooks Enterprise
Yeah.
when anything is
Yeah.
outsourced. Yeah.
So it's all part of the process here. And the one final thing that I want to say, and this might foreshadow what we're going to cover in our next section when we talk about how the people on the floor actually interact with the system and update the system. But MISys allows you to add unlimited custom fields in just about any area of the system. And here in our routing details, what I've done is added some custom fields, one being a detailed operation instructions field, so I can put some detailed instructions for each step, and even a link to an external file here. And the reason that's useful is not just to have it in the data, but this stuff can become accessible from the floor, and you can literally create custom information screens for each operator to see when they log in. So we'll see that if shop floor data collection and live data entry from the people doing the work is important to you, be sure to check out the next section on barcoding and the shop floor interface.
All right. So in today's times, like everything, needs everything right now. They need to be able to access information right away. They need to access it. When manufacturing, a lot of it is through the barcode scanning, being able to process things in real time. And so I was looking, and it looks like you have what's called MISys EXT. And I was wondering if you could tell us like what you're process with that and how it looks or how it shows in there so we can get kind of a demo on that.
Yeah, so MISys has been doing barcoding for years. And it's always existed because there's obviously a lot that happens in a manufacturing environment. And, probably the hardest way to go about keeping your system current is to have a bunch of paperwork floating out on the floor and then hopefully collect that all back in and dump it on some poor soul's desk in the office so they can manually enter everything that went on that day. Not that there's anything wrong with that if that's what you're doing and that's the way you want to do it, but there is a more efficient way if you'd like, and that's to collect it from the floor, and barcoding is usually the way of doing it. Now, we've gone through multiple generations of barcoding software, and the one thing that was always a sticking point with barcoding is that let's just say that a lot of times the people who are out on the production floor doing the work are not the most tech savvy folks. And even if they are, they're not necessarily interested in stopping their important job to go keep that system up to date. So in the latest generation of barcoding, which we call MISys EXT, it's beyond just barcoding. It's an entire shop floor interface that in our design anyway, is a little bit more active in terms of guiding activities and allows you to maybe replace some of that paperwork that needs to go out to the floor with interactive screens so that not only you don't have to get the paperwork printed and prepped and everything like that, but also so that somebody who's using it will go to a device, the same device they enter their data on, to see what they need to do next. So they're actually getting something out of using the system other than just being forced to enter something after the fact. So we have already in the previous chapters set up a bunch of purchase orders and scheduled a bunch of production. Now we're going to talk about how that all gets knocked down and how it's actually updated from the floor. That's going to happen through this tool, MISys EXT. Now, the one thing you might notice here is that we are now in a web browser. We are no longer in the MISys application. We specifically designed this to be a web application, no app to install. This will literally run on any device that has a web browser in it. If you use Chrome, you can use the live translation tool. So if you have people that, where English is an issue, people using this all over the world in multiple languages, just using built-in Google Translate. And because it's in a web browser, it'll run on any device with a web browser in it, including, say, iPad, iPhones, Android devices, handheld, all-in-one scanners. The only requirement is that it have a modern web browser. So I'm going to log in now as a different user. I'm a guy on the floor. And I'm going to get a much more simplified interface. I don't create orders here. I can't edit bills of material. I'm not doing any of that administrative stuff. I only process transactions. So if I'm a receiver and the only thing I ever do is receive purchase orders, I can go right here on screen. If I'm getting a delivery, I can choose or scan the purchase order that's coming in. I'm going to do a lot of clicking here because I don't have a scanner on me. I can see what items I'm supposed to receive here. I can receive one or more items. I can choose a bin to put them in if you need bin tracking. I can assign lot numbers or serial numbers if you need lot or serial tracking. In this case, I'm just going to say we received everything that we ordered. In it comes. It's instantly added to inventory in MISys, no waiting. It'll even offer to print out barcode labels because end of the day, this is a barcoding solution. And anytime we introduce new material, whether it's because we received it or because we just made it in production, it's nice to have that consistently labeled so that if we ever touch it again, go to use it, go to count the inventory, go to ship it, whatever, we've got a consistent barcode we can scan. So I'll say yes. We do use Zebra label printers for this, so you can have a default printer, a default label you like to use. I don't have any Zebra label printers handy, but I'll just show you on screen an example of something. So we could say, barcode for the item and where it's going, We could have just an item description. You can even use the Zebra label printer to customize your own labels using any of the many fields that we reveal. You literally just use the Zebra printer software to change these. So that's receiving. And then, of course, we have production. Now, MISys allows you to do the old school route. Traditional manufacturing systems will typically have you print out these barcoded shop travelers. So that essentially the idea is that you scan the order number, scan the step, start the timer, and then scan again, enter your quantity, and you're done. MISys supports that. You can absolutely use these barcoded travelers, send them to the floor, and scan your way through. But an increasingly popular option with MISys EXT is leveraging dashboard alerts. Every copy of MISys allows you to set out unlimited customizable dashboard alerts for each individual user. And when you think about that in the context of somebody on the floor, that typically means some kind of a to-do list, targeting an individual person or an individual area with all of the orders that might be scheduled for them on a given day. So if I look at my to-do list, I happen to be the guy in the kitting area, and I'm the one who's supposed to be, taking care of these orders. So I'll grab one of the orders that we scheduled previously. I can see all of these key fields that I've decided I need to be able to see, including custom fields like detailed operation instructions, a link to an external file. I've literally had a customer recently say that they created a library of YouTube videos showing how to load tooling onto their various machines, and they added a field on each step showing the appropriate YouTube video for that machine so that the operator, when they see what they're supposed to do, can also access the YouTube video showing how to load the machine.
So there's a link right to it?
Yeah, it's a
That's
clickable hyperlink. This one just goes to MISYSinc.com, but that could be a file, that could be a YouTube video, anything with a URL right at your fingertips. And so this is what I talk about when, we say the operator's getting something out of the bargain here. They go in and they can see everything that they're supposed to do. And this is really easily customizable. You don't need any special skills. You just edit your MISys alert. That'll dictate exactly what your operators see. And it can be different for each department, each operator, depending on what they do and their individual preferences.
Can you have custom fields on here too?
Yeah. These last two are actually custom fields right here. I added these myself just by doing the add custom fields function in MISys, which is super easy. And of course, as an operator, once I see everything that I'm supposed to do, maybe open up the linked file here, all I need to do is jump in and start my timer. Right?
Easy. Yeah.
And I can access the whole bill of materials. So if I need to see what materials I'm supposed to be grabbing, because in this case I'm the kitting guy, I'm supposed to grab a bunch of materials, I can see the entire bill of material. And normally I would be scanning my way through this, but in this case I'm going to tap. So I can issue these individual components. I can see how many I'm supposed to get. I can even say, well, I know I only need to use 40, but I'm going to put the whole box in there. So maybe it's 200 parts, even though we only need 40. So I can literally scan everything I'm doing. MISys has a transaction for everything you could physically do with your inventory, and it can be logged right from a mobile device, a tablet, PC, whatever on the floor, just to keep, again, everything up to date. And there's an audit trail for all this stuff. So every little thing that I'm doing is going into the audit trail. My name's on it. And that's also, of course, subject to security permissions and all of that. And whenever I'm done, I can say done, stop my timer, log how many units I did. And that's not all, by the way. When I do that, this was an order that I'd already worked on, but when I do that, I can also log things like scrap if I have to throw something away. Basically, we just want it to be easy to capture everything that's going on the floor. And that ties it all back to our first section. We were talking about the QuickBooks integration. All these little variables that we're capturing go into the final cost of the products that we're making and are passed over to QuickBooks, so that you can have confidence that when you look at your cost of goods sold and how much money you're making on each product and what they cost you to make, all these variables find their way in.
You're just getting the accurate costing, and then the accounting function on QuickBooks, they're getting everything they. It really gives a business owner everything that they need to be successful. Definitely.
And because this does every last transaction that MISys supports, you can go all the way up to the end where when you put the finished good away, you can trigger the transfer right over to QuickBooks right from this device. Uh, and the kind of unsung, but maybe the biggest benefit, everybody does an inventory count every now and then.
Yes.
I've never met
Cycle
anybody who
counts.
looks forward to it.
Yeah.
When you have barcoding, you do physical inventory in a barcoding system. Now you're not chicken scratching into a count sheet that somebody in
Mhm.
the office needs to try to translate. You literally just scan the already labeled items, enter quantity, move on to the next one, and you can post it. And if MISys even has tools where if multiple people are counting, the system can detect if it looks like somebody might have counted, two different people counted the same thing
Mhm.
twice. So some really sophisticated tools to do cycle counts or count up your inventory whenever you have to.
Would you say most companies go with this option?
More
Or
and more
no?
of them now.
More of them? Okay.
The other thing about something like this, MISys is a modular system.
Mhm.
So you get to pick and choose the functions that you need at the time. So more and more companies are just getting this right out of the gate because having shop floor data entry and barcoding is a priority. But there's still a lot of companies that say, this looks great. We do want to be able to do this, but we've got a long way to go.
Mhm.
The folks in the office who are implementing the system need to get comfortable before they
Mhm.
start training the people out on the floor to use it. Um, and that's
So
fine
baby
too.
steps.
Yeah, baby steps. And
Mhm.
because it's modular, you can leave this off, but add it when
Mhm.
you need it.
Mhm. I've noticed that this is a feature that a lot of my clients ask for when they call.
Yeah. Yeah. If I had to guess, I would say somewhere between 40 and 50% of our new users get this right out of the gates.
Mhm.
But I end up doing a lot of demos for existing customers who are planning on adding it.
I can imagine.
Yep.
Yeah, no, that's a great feature, and especially just all that you're able to do, and just it even just creates another degree of accuracy.
Yeah. Yeah. And as the guy who used to be the guy who entered the data after the fact, the stack
Mhm.
of bakery manufacturing, so the stack
Yeah.
of flour encrusted papers that had to find their way back to me, and the
Yeah.
attempts to read the pen that was smudged by the oil that got spilled on. Um,
Or
you
the
know,
donut that was being eaten, right?
yeah, exactly. Oh, that was me. But
Oh, okay.
but when that comes back in,
Yeah.
instead of having to hand enter that, we're shifting it um, over to the people who are actually doing the work. And I almost said shifting the burden, but the way this is designed to
Mhm.
work, especially with the paperless element, it's much less of a burden because the information that they would have had to look for on that piece of paper is now
Mhm.
shown on screen. And then all they need to do
Right.
to log what they did is a couple of more taps to start and
Yeah.
stop that timer and enter a
Yeah.
quantity.
And it makes it easier for the shop floor people, makes it many less mistakes,
Exactly.
hands down. Yeah.
And and this was a relatively simple example, but
Mhm.
I'm sure there are a lot of folks out there that have specialized requirements. They have
Mhm.
warehouse management and bin location
Mhm.
tracking where they need to record where everything's being taken from and being put back into, or more importantly, like we had in my previous company, serial or lot number
Mhm.
traceability. And that's
Right.
another, MISys obviously supports serial and or lot tracking on an item by item basis. Um,
Mhm.
but when you're using this, it's going to prompt you, or what lot
Mhm.
number did you receive? What lot number did you use? What serial number did you make? What serial number went into this serial number? What lot number went into that
Mhm.
lot number? All entered through here so that end of the day, if you ever need to look something up, if there's a quality issue, you now have full traceability and it came straight from the people who physically put that stuff together.
Yeah. This is, I think I could see a lot more people purchasing this nowadays.
Yeah.
This part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And, again, the biggest thing is this is the kind of horsepower that you typically see in those bigger manufacturing
Mhm.
ERPs, but we only cover the operations side. So all of the accounting, all the sales stuff just stays in QuickBooks, and we're only going to take over the side
Mhm.
of the business that we handle better.
Mm. Yes, because QuickBooks doesn't really do a great job with the manufacturing portion of it unless you just have very light manufacturing and you already know what your labor costs are going to be and your overhead costs. That's where QuickBooks Enterprise is fine in that area. But what's great about your product is that it's just such a seamless integration and it's almost like it's working as one system.
And again, that is exactly what we are going for.
Yep.
Um, and fortunately for us, I mean, years and years ago, when we decided to rebuild the system from the ground up, specifically with QuickBooks in mind, that was a little bit of a risk.
Hmm.
But it has really taken off. We've sold our
Hmm.
software all in all to more than 7,000 manufacturing companies since we've been around.
Okay.
Um, and this approach of linking this kind of manufacturing capability to
Hmm.
the accounting system that folks are already familiar with really
Hmm.
seems to strike a chord for, you know, if you're not ready to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to move into the full ERP space.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, perfect. Well, um, think what we where we can go from here is that people who are watching this, they're interested in the software in QuickBooks. You can reach out to me. There's a contact link below, and I'll set up an appointment with Daryl to go over the software. And we can kind of go from there, give you your pricing information, that type of thing. And like Daryl had mentioned, you don't have to go with each each individual. You can choose different sections that you want to purchase, so you don't have to go with everything all at once. You can, but that's where he can kind of take you through all that navigation to decide what's best for you, and also give a quote. So that would be, I would say, the next steps if you're interested in learning more.
Yeah. And I would say, all of this stuff is some hugely powerful tools. One of the other nice things is that all of the implementation resources you need, training, support, one-on-one guidance for setup of data, and
Mhm.
tailoring your processes to the system and getting the most out of it, we include it. It's all
Mhm.
done in-house, and we provide all of the support you need to get up and running.
Now, one question I do have is what with your typical implementation, how long does it take?
Very good question, the million-dollar question.
Hmm.
So all of our implementation again is included with your purchase. So you get access to training webinars, which we do every single month. We've got 32 total hours worth of training sessions that we give on a rotating schedule. We have unlimited tech support, and we will assign you with one individual implementation expert called a SureStart coach who will meet with you remotely using Zoom and guide you through each step of the setup process all the way up until your go live date. How long that takes depends heavily on a number of different factors. How much data you have to set up. It takes a little bit longer to set up 100,000 items rather than a few hundred. Um, every company has different resources. If you've got lots of folks that can chip in and help out, it's going to go a little bit more easily than if you dump it on an intern's lap, which we don't recommend, but still some people do. Um, and then, of course, just your own internal schedule and what's going on. All in all, with all those factors considered, if you can chip away at it steadily, and we're only talking about several man hours per week, not shutting down operations to get it done, we tell people to plan on a timeline of somewhere between 2 and 6 months to go from I just got the software, now what, to we have our go live date.
Okay, and then usually you would implement your software first, and then connect it, of course, to QuickBooks once you're ready.
Yeah. So
Okay.
you are going to operate business as usual while MISys is being set up and while you're training on it. Now you can connect to QuickBooks to pull that data out using that automated integration, like import your bills of materials and your items,
Hmm.
etc. But you will not go live with MISys. MISys isn't going to be posting to QuickBooks any live data until you are 100% ready and confident that your data is good, and everybody who's going to be using the system knows what they're doing, which of course our Sure Start coaches will make sure of.
Hmm. So in your accountants stay in the accounting portion of it, and then your production managers and anyone who needs is part of the production process stays within MISys. Okay.
Exactly. So sometimes you can save users on the QuickBooks side, or keep people
Mhm.
out of your accounting system that really shouldn't be in there to begin with. And again, going back to the beginning, one of the other options is certain people who might need elements of the QuickBooks integration, but
Mhm.
who you don't want to have direct access to QuickBooks, into it in their one of their many really well thought out and welcome options with how they allow third parties like us to integrate with them, allows our application to log in the background so that you don't have to log into QuickBooks, but you can still, MISys is still able to see
Still
data
working.
and push data. All those integration points work without the person using MISys being able to actually get into QuickBooks.
That's great. Well, I think that's about it. Thank you so much, Daryl, for spending all this time with me and going through all the features that you offer. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And
Thank you,
yeah,
Raeann, very much. And thank you, everybody who watched the videos.
thank you.